This is Trophy Dark, Throne of the Forest Queen, Part 1. Let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. When I call on you, please say your name, your pronouns, and anything else you would like for viewers of the YouTube video to know about you. I'll start. My name is Jason. I use he, him. They is also fine. I am the co-publisher of Trophy, along with its creator, Jesse Ross. And I have run this, the old version of this incursion quite a few times. And this is the new final version, which I have not run yet. And so I'm excited to do that. Let's go over to Mads.
Hi, I'm Mads, she, they, and I've played just a couple of games of Trophy Dark, and I've run a few third-party incursions, and I love this game a lot, so I'm excited to play this one.
Fabulous. Thank you. And Bob.
Yeah, my name's Bob. I use he, they pronouns, and I have run a handful of Trophy Dark incursions over the years, but this was my first time getting to play, and I'm very excited.
Fabulous. Thank you. And Sarah.
Hello, I am Sarah. I use she, hers, but they is also fine. And I am just a massive fan of all things roleplay.
Awesome. Thank you. I will say, if you're watching this video and you're a frequent peruser or watcher of my channel, having Mads and Sarah in the same game is going to be like crossing the streams. So yeah, it's like the multiverse colliding. Okay. So let's go ahead and do CATS. CATS is an acronym that stands for concept, aim, tone, and subject matter. I like to do this in order to establish some basic expectations for what's going to be happening during the next 2 weeks as we play this incursion. So the concept, Trophy Dark is a horror fantasy game with an emphasis on the horror. I would say it's actually really kind of like a dark fairy tale sort of story. It's about a group of doomed treasure hunters going into a place that does not want them there, except in this case, they kind of do want you there. But going into a place that does not want you there, and they're trying to exploit it. They're trying to like grab antiques and treasures and things they can sell in order to fund this very expensive drive that each of the characters has. In many ways, it's a game about hubris. It's a game where we kind of see the characters at the end of their story. The game embraces what we call at Trophy HQ the play to lose ethos, which is, you know, do your best to keep your character alive, but at some point things are going to turn and you're going to either be drastically altered, you're going to spiral in some way, you might even die. And when that happens, lean into it, embrace it, and tell a good story. This particular incursion is called Throne of the Forest Queen. It's one of the very first ones we published back in Codex. It has changed quite a bit since then. And it's actually probably the most like a fairy tale. We say that it's a fairy tale game, and this is the most on the nose fairy tale-ish one. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Aim. The aim of the characters in the story is to find treasure or to reach the heart of the incursion. The aim of us as players is to tell a good story. That's kind of our main job here. And over the course of the next 2 sessions, our initial aim is going to be to create characters, introduce them, and then we'll do the first 2 rings of the 5-ring incursion. In part 2, we'll do rings 3, 4, and 5. Tone. I would say that this particular incursion has a lot more of pastoral whimsy than some of the others. It's not as gritty and grisly as Trophy Dark can be. This one is a lot more, definitely has a more like pastoral feel, a more natural feel, a beauty of nature kind of feel, but it is still very sinister. So don't think that you're off the hook as far as that goes. In terms of subject matter, the listed content warnings on the incursion are body horror, cannibalism, our favorite, graphic violence, harm to animals is really piquant in this one, manipulation, slavery, and torture. These are all things that might come up. We will do our best to keep those things behind a veil. It's hard to line those out, but if we need to veil them for lines and veils, we'll do that to keep it kind of off screen, even if it's something happening in the story. Speaking of lines and veils and other safety tools, we'll be using 3 different safety tools. The first is going to be the X card. You can just say X card if something happens in the game that is uncomfortable in an unfun way, you can type it in the chat or say X card, and I will stop play. And I might ask what is being X carded so I know what to change, but I won't ask why. And lines and veils, which I alluded to earlier. Lines are things that we're not going to have in the game at all. Veils are things that we are going to, it's okay if it's in the game, but we prefer not to role play it out. I'm going to say my lines and veils just as an example, and then I'll rely on all of you to put your lines and veils in the character keeper when we create characters. But as an example, we're going to have sexual violence behind a line. I prefer not to role play or have that in my stories. And then we're going to put torture behind a veil. I'm okay with torture being a thing that happens in the story. I just prefer not to role play the torture. And the third tool is the open door policy. If you have to leave for some reason, you can just leave. You don't have to tell us. You can just go. And so, are there any questions about cats?
Nope.
Okay. Then with all that in mind, I'm going to pause the recording now so that we can create characters. And so if you're watching the video, we'll see you in just a sec. Okay, let's go ahead and meet these characters. I'm going to go in the order of the sheet. And so just the basics is all we need to know. Name, occupation, background, drive, rituals, just basically the choices you had to make. And then if you have any thoughts on your drive and you want to tell us about that a little bit, you can certainly do that, but you don't have to, because part of what we're going to do is be exploring the drives as we play. And so Mads, tell us about Lek.
Okay, so Lek is an occupation magician. His background at this point is wandering refugee. Drive is to break the geas placed by the Witch of Navask. And his two rituals are Fault, which is strike at the weakest point of an object with phantasmal force, and Voice, alter your voice or make it come from somewhere nearby.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Let's go to Sarah and Mirren.
Mirren is a poet, but has a background of an uninspired artisan, which leads to the drive. They would like to become part of the swirling court. Rituals we chose were dazzled, to distract or confuse creatures nearby with colorful moving lights, and blink, a creature you touch teleports to a spot you can see.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And let's go to Bob and Akale.
Yeah. So Akale uses they, them pronouns. Their occupation is woodcutter, and they have a background as an escaped cultist. They know the ritual parse, so divine the meaning of any word, writing, sound, sign, or symbol. And their drive is to repay their losses to the Southern Pass Company. And I think the broad idea I have on that is that the Southern Pass Company is some organization that they had to engage with to help them escape the cult they escaped.
Nice, good, love it. Okay, we will be learning about these characters much more as we play. In fact, that's our main job, is to learn about the characters until they're dead or doomed. I want to talk about just some gameplay things really quick. So I know you're all familiar with the game, but this is mostly for people watching the video. The thing about Trophy in general, and Trophy Dark in particular, is that it is a collaborative storytelling game. So I have this incursion, Throne of the Forest Queen, and that incursion there's a basic through line of the story from Ring 1 to Ring 5, but it does not have the bulk of the story. The meat of the story is going to be what we talk about at the table and what we do at the table. And so our story will be very unique as compared to anybody else playing this incursion. Now, the main way that we affect the story, there's a couple ways. One is me posing questions to you and you answering them. The other big way is through the risk roll. The risk roll is the primary die roll in the game, and part of that roll is what's called the Devil's Bargain. The Devil's Bargain is a thing that happens in the fiction no matter what, if you take the bargain. And by taking that bargain and by agreeing that yes, this thing will happen in the story, you get a bonus in your risk roll die pool. Now, as an example of how devil's bargains work, let's say that Lek is trying to, my famous example, jump across a crevasse. Okay, so Lek is trying to jump across a crevasse, and I offer to Mads, I say, well, as a devil's bargain, Mads, no matter what, Lek's sword is going to fall down the crevasse. So if Lek is successful, it's because the sword came loose and fell down the crevasse, right? If Lek is not successful, it's because Lek also fell down the crevasse, right? So that's that's sort of the idea there. But of course, Bob is going to offer a much more interesting and fascinating devil's bargain than that. And so Bob says, no matter what, the Witch of Navask is on the other side of the crevasse, right? And so now we have a really interesting, juicy story detail to play with that the incursion did not foresee, that we as players didn't really foresee. And so that's sort of how devil's bargains work. Sometimes they're simple. The falling sword is a simple one, but sometimes that's the best one. But sometimes they can be more intriguing and more focused on the characters. And I recommend always taking a look at characters' drives to get a sense of how to answer these questions of like devil's bargains and things like that, or looking at your own drive when I pose a question to you and interpreting the answer through your drive is a good strategy for Trophy Dark. So that is sort of the deal with some gameplay notes. There's a few other little die rolls and other things to learn about the game. Well, I will say one other thing. At some point, you're going to turn against each other. That's part of the spiral. And there are some mechanics to facilitate that, but just know that it's going to happen at some point and lean into it when it happens. So that's what that drama is what we're here for. So I think with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the incursion, and then we'll take a little break before we start. Throne of the Forest Queen by David Morrison. The constant drizzle that has accompanied you through the tangled woods abates as you come into a lush glade baked in golden sunlight. The stink of mud and leaf mold is cut through with a cleaner scent of pine and crisp mornings. A stag at the edge of the clearing casts a lazy glance at you before trotting further into the wood, its flashing tail an invitation to follow. You have reached the Queensweald, rumored home to salvation, inspiration, cures to fantastical diseases, and wonders conjured only in dreams. Only the stout of heart enter the realm of the Forest Queen, fewer still return. Why then, if her favor is so hard to claim, do so many mortals seek it? Well, quite simply, it has value beyond gold. The Queen's power is nearly limitless. She controls the Fey court of the forest and can make the dreams of mortals into reality if she so chooses. For so long as people desire the impossible, they will venture in search of her. And so with all that said, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and start ring 1. Ring 1. The treasure hunters find a clearing in the Queensweald. You have been in this forest seeking the Forest Queen, who will, or at least has the power to, grant all of your wishes to help you become a part of the swirling court, to help square up with the Southern Pass Company, to perhaps go toe-to-toe with the Witch of Navask. But that is not yet. For now, you're just trying to make your way. And this forest clearing, and indeed the whole journey in the forest up to this point, has a lightness and a loveliness to it. And I think I want to twist that just a little bit by asking a question to everyone. It almost feels like you are in liminal space. You are transitioning, not just from the outer edge of the forest to the inner edge of the forest, not just from your lives of deprivation back in Fort Durin to something more more natural and beautiful, not just from poverty to hopeful wealth, or is the ambition of wealth, but actual transition from what is real to what is dream, from what is solid to what is ephemeral. How do you know you are transitioning to another place as you make your way through the forest, and in particular as you reach this clearing? Whoever wants to answer first can go ahead.
Lek has wandered around for a long time now, and he has not wanted to come back to a forest, this forest, any forest. But because of his failing, he is here, and he notices as they go through and come into this clearing, the change from the browns and the blacks and the mud and the muck into what looks like verdancy, and remembering what that green, what that color just felt like when he was going through the forest space. And it's calming, but yet also a dread that he feels in his heart.
Akale or Miran?
I think that Akale, I think they notice something similar. This traversing the forest is something that they've done day in and day out since making their way to the fort and trying to work off their debts. And the kind of forest that they're used to trudging is the gray of ash. It's open in a very exposed and kind of parched way, a barren way. And I think they start to notice two things that can maybe elaborate on the things that we've just mentioned. And I think it's colorful flowers, which I think is something that Akale maybe hasn't had time to ponder ever. And then the sound of a living forest off in the distance. I think that gives them pause.
Thank you. Miran?
Mirren has spent most of this journey through the forest, trudging behind her companions, pulling up the rear, and quite uninspired in any, like, words don't come to her, and she's trying very hard to just put anything together. And part of her pursuit into the forest is to hope that the queen might both be able to provide entry to this swirling court, but also connect me once again to the inspiration I once felt when I was a young poet. And so as we cross into this clearing, and there is that kind of pastoral sound of music sort of vibe, I think Mirren gets the first taste of what her inspiration could become, as if, like, taking a deep breath of this outside air, maybe it's feeding into that inspiration, almost as if the air itself was filled with like 2% opium, just a little bit heady and positive for the first time in days.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I think now might be a good time to sort of describe what the characters look like as well. And I think I'd like that just as we sort of like frame up our scene here together with all of you walking in this like loveliness, this anew loveliness. I want to just have the scene with the three of you a bit, but also if you'll take a moment to kind of describe what you look like as well, I think that would be very nice.
Mirren practically skips and does the actual Julia Andrews twirl with her cloak. And she is dressed entirely in green, as if her idea of camouflage was Robin Hood-esque. It's a little too darted. It's a little too structured. Oh, isn't it wonderful to see the sun at last?
So Akale is, or Akale rather, is I don't know how else to describe it besides woodcutter out of a fairy tale, which seems appropriate, which to me means like layered, textured fabrics, lots of like thick textured fabrics, browns, muted greens, nothing so extravagant as a Robin Hood kind of vibe, certainly. And at least some of their presence is defined in opposition to their past as a cultist. So like they grow their hair out. That's something they couldn't do in the cults. They've got a long like mane of hair, not much facial hair to speak of, kind of a mustache that maybe on a good day you would call bushy. But yeah, I think that's what they look like, and a little bit distracted as they're walking through. I'm not used to seeing the sun and so many trees in one place.
I think Lek is sort of in the middle of the wanderings of their companions, of his companions, and he is in very muted colors, like they were worn from long wear, but mostly, maybe a touch of color here and there on his hood, which is mostly blue-gray, like a passing storm of sorts, and then his clothing is dark, and again just like either a coming or a passing storm. He looks like he wants to be noticed, but yet not. His hands are covered by his long sleeves, and there's like some gloves there, but what's peeking out from the fingerless gloves are fingers that may or may not look like they're healing from something.
Very intriguing. We can continue the scene a little bit. I'll interrupt it whenever it's time.
Mirren almost boisterously or drunkenly throws an arm through each of her companions, says, "But I didn't know it would be this beautiful. Did you know it was going to be like this?"
Akale's a little bit stiff, but receiving of the arm through arm. And again, like staring up at the tops of the trees above them, kind of distracted, like, not sure I could have imagined it being like this. Is any other place like this?
I'm just glad to see sun. This is a little uncomfortable for me, but I mean, we're here, so we need to find this queen as soon as possible.
I agree
Well,
on that.
I'm sure we're on the right path. Look how those flowers, such brightly lush colors, just tilt their faces towards the light. Is it anything short of magical?
Disturbingly so. Very magic. And I think Akale like stops, pauses, and maybe like, lightly touches a hand to the bark of the trees, trying to like call on some of their woodcutter knowledge, not in any serious or deep way, but I'm sure these trees are remarkable
At the
compared to
base
what
of
they've
the
been cutting.
trees, at the base of the trees of that tree is a ring of mushrooms standing tall over a patch of very lush grass, very lush despite the fact it's under tree cover. There is a sweet scent on the air. There's a lazy drone of fat flies bobbing up and down. This is a place suffused with fey magic. That is readily apparent. And indeed, because you have the ritual parse, I will tell you that as a certainty, Akale. This is the realm of the Forest Queen. You are in it. You are on the outer borders. How are the trees different here, Akale, than they are from what you're accustomed to?
I think the most readily apparent thing would be that the trees Akale is accustomed to are dense, like they're seasoning already before they're even cut down. The little I understand about actual wood cutting involves like cutting them and then drying the wood, and it really does dry. It loses a ton of water weight. But yeah, the tree is already dense, super dry, and also still surprisingly hard to cut into despite their dryness. These trees, in contrast, feel alive. I think like they feel moist. Oh, not giving to the touch like a pillow would be, but like something alive would be.
Indeed. There is up ahead in the clearing a winsome young goat herd sitting on a rock. He is crying, his face in his hands. Mirren, what do you do?
In spite of their sunny outlook, finally starting to feel like they belong in their own brain again, having been in this depressed, illiterate funk, Mirren is still suspicious of strangers in this place, and so would lean over to Lek, perhaps whispering at their ear, "Do you suppose he's crying for a good reason?"
I have found that it is no use to speculate. All we can do is go up and ask.
Well, if you don't speculate first, then how will you know what you're going to say when they say what they're going to say?
I will usually say, "Are you all right?" And Lek will
Perhaps
go forward and,
I will just observe
approach.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The goat herd looks up. He's young, probably like 13, 14. And he's very, he seems like a very like soft kind of individual, like a very, he doesn't have the rangy look of a goat herd that you might be accustomed to. He looks like he was just sprung fully formed from the earth to be a goat herd. His goats are nearby, watching you with what the text calls Capron disdain, which I assume means goat-like. I don't know. But yeah, he looks up at you. He himself has like kind of the quality of a baby goat, right? And he says, I've lost 3 of my herd.
And what is the consequence if you don't come back with all?
Oh, my father will be very angry, but I don't care about that. I just care about my goats. They're out there, lost. They could be frightened, or they could be prey for wolves or other terrible creatures. I feel like I've failed at the most fundamental part of being goat herd, which is to keep the goats herded.
You haven't been doing this for very long, have you, youngster?
The goats are giving this conversation side eye. They are not impressed by any of this, and they go on munching their grass. He looks at you and says, maybe you could help me. You and your friends there. They couldn't have gone far, and I have to stay here with the others.
Do they respond to calls? Do you know?
Well, I like to sing a song to them. I like to think that they like it. Once again, the goats looking somewhat over it. And he says, but perhaps if you were to offer them food, or I don't know, goats can be so fickle. Won't you help me, please? They can't have gone far.
Lek looks down, trying not to look at his hands, but he'll look off to the side and think about it and say, if they haven't gone far, I think we might be able to help, or at least I will. And then Lek will side-eye the other two and say, if they haven't gone far, we should be able to find them. And
What
then,
well,
go ahead.
no, sorry, no, go ahead. It's fine.
And just, Lek is going to use voice and see if he can combine a song with a call, with a goat call.
Oh, I like that. That's very good. Yeah, I think that's a good plan. We'll follow up with that in a bit. Mirren, Akale, are you down for grabbing some stray goats?
I'm just imagining the side-eye chain, the goats to the herder, to Lek, to the Mirren, and then Mirren will just look side-eyed at Akale.
It's very, very appropriate because Akale is trying to get eye contact with one of the goats. Akale loves goats.
Full circle.
Yeah. Just like fully hopefully in the image in my head is real of just like one goat staring directly up at Akale, and Akale just really calmly, not really even trying to send a message. But yeah, Akale would speak up and be like, I could find a goat or 2 or 3. It should be possible.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Good.
Oh, child, I can see how concerned you are. They can't be too far away. Besides, these goats can take care of themselves, can't they?
And he takes your hands and he says, I do worry about them, you know. They could be anywhere. They could have fallen down a crevasse. They could fell prey to beasts. They could be laying on the lush grass at this very moment, their stomachs split open and their warm entrails scenting the air, a carnal
Sweet.
perfume.
Sweet boy. What was your name?
Kindness is rewarded. in the Queensweald. People will remember. The goats will remember. The trees will remember. They will remember this charitable act that you do.
Sweet boy. Are you afraid of something else in the woods? Some fate may befall your goats that you're not telling us about?
He says, no, of course not. The Forest Queen, her realm is gentle, peaceful, and made for all. But the beasts of the woods do sometimes forget themselves, don't they?
Well, as we all do.
Gentle sounds all right with me, I guess.
And he says, regrettably, the goats all went in different directions. But there's 3 goats and 3 of you. Perhaps if you split up, the work will be faster.
Well, I'm all right with it if you two are.
I'm fine. We can split up.
Go on, lad. Point out where they went.
Yes.
He will. One of the goats went deeper into the wood. One of the goats went out towards a little cottage in the clearing. And another went in the direction of the old bridge. And so pick your route. The cottage, the old bridge, or deeper in the woods.
Child, is there one of the goats that might be more ornery than the others? I've had the opportunity to be around many a goat and feel like I could handle that the best.
My goats were stricken with a momentary pang of wanderlust, but otherwise, I assure you, they are gentle and obedient creatures. They have merely lost their way momentarily.
Wistful goats. Oh, all right. Well,
I
friends,
volunteer to go after the goat near the bridge, if only for the opportunity to think of rhymes with the word bridge.
I can go into the forest.
all right. That's fine with me. If either of you fall into any kind of trouble, just be sure to make yourself known loudly and unlike a goat, and I should be able to come to your aid.
I
Could
thank
you
you.
give me an example of a sound that is unlike a goat?
Uh,
Just so I know what you'll be listening for.
I think Akale does like a really loud owl sound that I'm not going to do because I have a microphone near my face.
I
So,
suppose with all the sun, you'll know it's not anyone else's owls about. Kind of like
Precisely.
suspiciously looking over my shoulder.
So let's fast forward a bit with the 3 of you going your 3 separate trails looking for goats. We shall start with deeper in the woods and Lek. Lek, you see the goat. You catch up to it fairly quickly, actually, after less than 10, 15 minutes of searching. The goat looks at you with its very human-like eyes. Knowing eyes. And it turns and looks in one direction. And its ears perk up as if listening to something. And it walks slowly in the direction that it turned in. It's hearing something and reacting to it. What do you do?
I'm definitely going to try my ritual voice and
Very
see
good.
if I can't call it back with a
Indeed.
combination of song and goat call.
I like it. This is a risk roll, fairly low stakes risk roll.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, Sarah, you can say what might go wrong here.
Something that might go wrong is that your voice carries further than you intend to, and you summon something out of the woods you didn't expect.
Let's talk dice. Do you have a relevant skill here?
Performance.
About rituals and performance, yeah.
Yeah.
You got one light die. Bob, why don't you offer the devil's bargain?
The first thing that comes to mind would be whether or not if you try this, you lose your voice for a short while. Maybe until we reach the second ring would be like a good out of game structure for it.
I have a good idea for it, actually, if you accept this. And so if you do take it's 2 light dice, and you have to do a dark die because of voice. So go ahead and roll risk with 2 light and 1 dark.
Okay.
That is a 3 light, which is a fail. You can add a dark to try again if you wish.
And yes, I will. All right, so 2 dark, 2 light.
A 5 dark, your ruin goes up and you have to stop there.
Okay.
The complication is going to be that you know exactly where your voice went. We'll come back to this moment. Let's check in with Mirren. You're at the bridge, right, Mirren?
That is correct.
You go in the direction of the bridge and you see the goat. The goat is currently being fawned over by a young woman on one side of the bridge. The bridge is collapsed, and you see that there's a young man on the other side of the collapsed bridge. The goat turns its head and looks up at you with almost like the look of a dumb lover in the throes of lust. Dull, but anxious. And the woman looks over and she says, "Oh, hello."
Oh, hello there.
Is this fellow yours?
Yes, I was sent to retrieve that little critter.
I'm afraid you've caught me in a bit of a predicament. My betrothed is on the other side of the bridge. It collapsed before I had a chance to cross. Perhaps you could help us reunite, help us cross this gap. You look like you are the adventuring sort.
I tip a hat, touch my chest, and blink to the other side of the ravine to talk to her face to face.
Wait, you do what now?
My ritual blink.
Oh,
I would like to
creature
teleport to the other side so that she and I are
Oh.
talking face to face.
So,
Because the guy
the
is
betrothed's
on
on
my
the other
side.
side. No, you're on the side of the woman.
Oh,
Yeah,
I flipped it. Sorry, I thought we
Okay,
were
yeah.
shouting.
That's okay. No. But you can be where he's
Then
at, I suppose.
yes. So I'm on the side with the woman and the goat.
And the
Yes.
goat.
Oh, you wish to be with your betrothed?
Well, yes. I mean, I suppose there's probably a way around, but who knows how long it could take? And well, you know how the creatures of the forest get whenever they forget themselves. I will ask you this question. One, do you empathize with their plight? And if so, what about them makes you empathize with their plight?
I do empathize with their plight, but only in the way as a storyteller wants the ending to turn out all right. And so I don't actually care about this woman at all. I've been sent here for a goat, and I don't have emotional investment in her story other than that it should end well.
She says, we're actually eloping. We are, well, we were forbidden from marrying each other, but our love is too great, you see. And so we were going to our secret place to take our vows there and become husband and wife.
That's so very sweet. I mean, the forbidden makes it all the better, doesn't it?
Yes, I suppose it does. And she says, can you help me?
Of course I can. It would be such, well, it's a joy to be a rescuer in any scenario. And I'll just tuck a piece of hair behind her ear and use my blink ritual to teleport her over to the other side of the ravine next to her betrothed.
What a convenient ritual to have in this moment.
Yes.
Let's do some dice. Do you have, well, Bob, what do you think could go wrong here?
I think this is a nice thing that popped into my mind. She gets over there, but not standing the same way she was. She's now parallel with the ground and falls, gets mud all over herself.
I think it's worse than that. I think she might just plummet down the
If we want to go worse, then I think, yeah, she makes it 7/8 of the way there, and then like slides down the other side of the ravine.
Jason, have you trademarked it's worse than that yet?
I think it is. Mads, do you have any other thoughts? Things that could go wrong with this teleportation. She like teleports into him. Like
Oh my gosh.
goopy
I'm always
mess.
thinking of transporter accidents. Oh
Do
my
we do a
gosh.
fly?
Oh my God. Oh
Yeah,
my
like in the
gosh.
fly, like in the Jeff Goldblum fly.
That would be the only thing I can think of, like much
They'll be
worse.
together forever.
So yeah, merged.
Truly can't think of anything worse than that.
Let's talk about dice. Miriam, do you have a relevant skill here?
I have rituals.
We have rituals. Passion too, kind of in a weird way. Might work.
In a weird way.
Bob, you can offer the devil's bargain.
I can't think of anything that's really sparkling to me, but what about if she do you have if you had something that was hanging on you, some sort of like water flask or something like that? What if she was resting her hand on that when you sent her over, and it goes with her? So some kind of item on you goes with her in the blink.
I think it would be something I would like to say. I like that. I would like to say it's some
My very best quill.
something about the
Or-
swirling court, right? Like some kind of book or token or something like that. Something you would really miss.
It's a very worn tarot-sized playing card in which it was kind of a woodcut depiction of the swirling court that I have had since I was very young and idolized and worried the edges as I've pursued this over the years. And that would be what gets lost.
If you take, so then I assume you're taking the deal. It's 2 light dice and 1 dark die.
All right.
And that's a
I
4
rolled a
light.
4.
Complication is going to be she changes in the blink. Something about it changes her. It may not even be something that you get to see play out, but it's something that will affect their relationship. If you're okay with that, we'll let it go. Otherwise, you can add dark die and try again for 6.
No, Miriam is really in it for the happy ending and kind of just nonchalantly, okay, I'll take care of this, and hurling rituals in a completely careless fashion. So perhaps she suddenly finds particular mannerisms of his to be annoying, and it slowly poisons their relationship.
She blinks over to the other side. There's a look of like wonder, like, and she holds up the card in her hand and she considers it. And her betrothed is so excited, he just grabs her and she drops the card down into the crevasse. And it sort of spirals down to the crevasse on the air.
Mirren watches every catch of the air like a garbage bag dancing in the wind until they cannot see the card any longer.
Bob and Mads, paint the scene for me. There's something about the lover's embrace that indicates things have changed. What is it? Subtle, perhaps, but...
Oh, subtle. I don't know. Mads, maybe you've got some inspiration, because the first thing I thought of was that she has a tail. That doesn't seem subtle.
I'm thinking that when he releases his first embrace, his first hug, then there's this very subtle change in his facial features. Like, you can't see her face because it's like, his face is pointed at the camera. But I mean, like, his face goes from like absolute delight to consternation. A frown comes across his face.
Good. Akale?
Yeah.
You follow the goat, or the trail, anyway, that you were put on, to a little cottage. And you see the goat doing its best to stay out of the tempest of an old woman who is swearing up a storm and kicking dirt, and she's pissed off. She's like, "Gah! Curse ye! Curse ye!" Ah! And the goat just sort of like backs off a little bit. What do you do?
I think I at first, upon seeing this, Akale pauses where they are, kind of on the edge of the clearing, it sounds like, and just gives it like an extra beat and a half, just to see if this old woman's going to yell specifically like what it is she's cursing this goat for.
She's cursing. She doesn't seem to be cursing the goat. The goat is just there. She's cursing something else.
Okay, well, that's perfect. That's maybe what they're waiting for then, and realizes like, oh, she's not cursing the
She
goat.
says, "I hope you choke on it. I hope you choke on every mouthful that you manage to steal. And I hope those that you sell it to, I hope they choke as well.
Uh, yeah, I think Akale takes a few hesitant steps into the clearing, does like a little half wave at their shoulder. When like, pardon me, I've been sent for the goat.
Ah, who cares about the goat? They took my honey. I had a stack of honey pots, and the ruffians came by, threatened me with their weapons, and loaded them up and went down the way. What sort of world do we live in where an old woman and her honey pots are not safe from ruffians on the road, I tell you?
Certainly seems like the kind of world where
Piss on
ruffians
your
are hungry
goat.
for honey. Well, don't please. I'm so sorry about your honey. Do you know where these ruffians went? And like Akale is now that kind of person who is like very mindful of the fact they have a thing they've got to get done to get onto another very important thing they're doing, and are kind of pulled in the two directions.
She says, yes, I know where they went. I managed to dig a little hole in one of the pots as they were stealing them from me, and so there should be a trail of honey that leads right to them. I shall happily reward you if you can help me get my honey back.
Well, I've got friends I need to meet back up with. How
Piss
many
on your
ruffians?
friends. This is a matter of principle, don't you see?
Yes,
The goat agrees with me. Look. The goat just standing there.
The goat doesn't look like they necessarily agree.
Just standing.
Yeah. Well, Akale is feeling very put upon. It's showing in their voice.
I can help you. I can help you. If you're like all the rest, you're here. Well, you're either here to steal honey, in which case too late, or you're here to find the forest queen. I can provide you with comestibles of very, very high quality. Honey tea, honey cakes,
well,
honey tarts.
That's the kind of thing that people at the center of the forest hunger for.
Honeycomb.
Well, that does sound all right to me.
Little sticks filled with honey.
Well, that sounds like quite the contraption. I appreciate the offer. I can help. I just need to take this old fellow here with me so as not to besmirch my duties in the first place. And how many ruffians did you say it was?
Just the two.
Small ones, you say?
I would say they were ruffians of an average size.
I'll have to put a spook in them, I imagine, but certainly I should at least give it a try.
Good. Thank you. There is kindness in this world, after all. Well, people forget themselves, you know.
Yeah, yes, I do know, actually. And what was your name?
She goes inside the cottage.
All right, that's normal. That's fine. That's great. Akale is talking to themselves. That's just how everyone answers that question around here, I guess. And leans down to the goat and tries to, get their attention a little bit.
The goat is already licking up the honey trail, just so you know.
Oh, perfect. Well, all right, friend. I was going to ask if you wanted to ride on my shoulders, but have at it. We actually are going this way. And pats, I think in Akale's experience, every goat they've met really enjoys a scratch on the top of the head, between the horns, if there are any. And so Akale gives a little attention to that, and then makes their way down the trail of honey with the goat.
Fabulous. Well, let's check back in with Lek. Lek, you find that you are currently without voice. Maybe you try to make cooing gestures towards the goat and nothing comes out. And yet, you hear yourself. Well, maybe you don't know exactly what you sound like, but it is you in the direction that the goat was looking. The goat has come to you, though, and you have the goat. But you hear in that direction. Perhaps you could come and help me, flower bearer.
And Lek looks at the goat.
The beautiful boy who wears the crown of flowers. So helpful to those of us in need. The goat has just, maybe you're kneeling down next to it. The goat has just bit a flower out of your hair that was not there previously.
And Lek reaches up to, his head, which was covered over by his hood, and feels these flowers.
This is your
No.
condition for your increase in ruin. You have flowers sprouting in your hair. What do you do when you hear this voice taunting you?
I think, well, Lek gets up and looks at the goat and I guess doesn't have any way of asking if he wants to come except to kind of jerk his head towards the sound of the voice and to the goat and kind of look a question like, coming with me? And
The goat,
he will go.
Yeah,
he will go towards the voice.
indeed. You actually see a fox. Its legs caught in a trap. And it speaks to you in your voice. It says, well, this is awfully convenient. I am in need of assistance, and I am able to express it to you with words that you can understand. Here we are. There aren't even supposed to be poachers in these woods. Surely the forest queen has dealt with them harshly, but that doesn't help me any, does it? Mayhaps you could help me. I would be happy to give you your voice back, or if that is not possible, to accompany you and be your crier.
Lek just smiles, kind of wincing with hearing his voice coming out of this fox, but contemplates the trap. Does it look really strong? Does it look like really bulky?
It looks like it could be pried open pretty easily.
Yeah, I think he's going to give it a shot to try to break, or at least like kind of lift it open so the fox can maneuver their paw out.
You can do that. The fox gets out, kind of favoring that leg a little bit. But he says, well, thank you. Now there's the matter of your voice. I will confess I don't have a lot of experience with this sort of thing, and so I don't know how I'm supposed to give it back to you.
Yeah,
You
Lek
don't
just
seem
looks
particularly
around.
talkative. This is a dilemma. Perhaps I could breathe it into you. A transference from my mouth to yours. I suppose that's a almost unbearably literal solution to the problem, but nevertheless, that's all I'm able to come up with at the moment.
And Lek will just, shrug and go, sure. I mean, is the goat still with me?
He is.
Okay. Is the goat giving me a side eye?
I don't know. The goats are always silently judging.
Yeah, true. That's true. So one more thing, sure. Yeah. I mean, it'll like we'll lean down. I mean, obviously, having pried the fox's paw out of the trap, and then just look into their eyes.
It opens its little fox mouth.
Mhm. And he'll take a breath, and then kind of like get really close up to the fox, and then put his mouth very close to the fox's, and try to whisper or say, it's like, do you want this?
And the fox says, I am merely trying to do what is right. You helped me, I help you.
And then Black mouths, agreed. And then will, put his mouth against the fox's.
The fox's breath is surprisingly sweet. It has the smell or taste of pine needles and flowers. His little tongue is not as coarse as you would have thought. And the teeth, while sharp, are gentle. He's very careful not to cut your lips or your gums as the attempted transference takes place. Mirren, what do you do once you're done with the lovers and you've acquired the goat?
This goat is now wearing Mirren's hat, which is very much that canoe kind of point with the feather. And we are headed back to the boy in the field.
Good. You see the boy and he sees the goat, and with a rush of excitement, he says, Artemis, you've returned. And the goat sort of, it's not some happy reunion. The goat just sort of wanders into the herd and is like, Akale, you're able to follow the honey trails. The ruffians didn't get very far. There were only 2 ruffians. Well, there's only 2 now that you can see. One of them is dead. Some sort of argument must have broken out between them. A honey pot has been used to bludgeon one of them to death, and they are laying in a sticky pool of shattered clay shards, honey, and blood. This must have just happened because the other one is there breathing hard. Please make a ruin roll.
Sure. Let's see. Oh, here we go.
You got a 2, which I think is below or equal to.
It's equal to.
Yeah, so you're good as far as ruin goes. But how do you feel upon seeing this, like stepping in right as this murder just happened?
I think Akale is deeply unsettled. I think Akale, I won't like fix a point in time, but somewhere between being in a cult and then having to run away from that cult, I wouldn't be surprised if something similar to this either was perpetrated by Akale's hands, or was something that they had to witness and kind of keep a zip lip about. So I think they're very unsettled.
The killer looks up at you and says, and now the thick golden fluid belongs to me. It shall be heavy and toothsome in my mouth. It shall roll down my gullet in viscous golden sweetness. It is all mine.
And where did you say the other unbroken jar of honey is?
There's actually a bunch of, you see a bunch. They have a little cart with all the jars of honey.
Oh, gotcha.
And one has been smashed over the head of
Smashed.
the dead one.
Is it safe to assume like the dead one and the smashed pile of honey and broken clay bits is kind of like between us?
Sure.
Okay. Jeez.
Sometimes you get so much in your mouth, you can't even open or speak.
It sounds like you should try that with what honey is left there, not to let it go to waste.
And he says, yes, I think both you and your little friend have the right idea. And you see that the goat is licking up the slurry of blood and honey right now.
Oh no, no, I get the goat. I don't want the goat doing that. I sling the goat over my shoulders. I'm big and strong.
Indeed. The goat seems like put out by that. Like, what do you do?
like a pet that ate something off the ground. I'm very
Right,
no.
exactly. He bends down. He's like, yes. And he takes it and he scoops up some of the honey into his mouth. He gets a handful that has just a little bit of like brain matter and bone. And he's like, mm. Yeah. Oh. Mm. Oh. It was a crime for that old crone to hoard this, to hoard such sweetness, to turn it into something so vile, such a diminishment as a cake. You want to eat it pure, you see.
Well, had you ever tried just asking for some?
He gives you a look.
I give him a look.
As if to say, do you think you're smarter than me? Do you think you understand my mind better than me?
No, I guess I can't answer in the affirmative to that question. I think I've got a similar amount of dead friends.
So what's it going to be? Are you here to take the honey? Are you here to take what's mine? We've already gotten rid of one of our companions. I've gotten rid of the other. Now here you come. What's one more person than a goat? Nothing, I say. Nothing.
Well,
when I can have all the sweetness in my mouth. All of it. Mine.
see the difference between your friend on the ground there and I, besides the fact that he's dead and getting deader by the minute, is I can bash your brains out. Quicker than anyone you've ever met.
He leans up against the cart. We'll go ahead and do it then. What's the point of anything anymore? The Forest Queen speaks to us no more.
What,
Everyone is forgetting themselves.
Is she not in her castle? Not at the center of the forest?
And he smiles. He says, whenever you see the horned knight, send him my regards.
And he'll know you by your name?
He lays underneath the cart.
All right. Well, I'm going to take this cart. But I'll leave you the honey what you've earned rightfully on the ground there.
Mm.
You can go on trying to find ways to get honey and kill friends another day.
Mm. You can take the cart.
Yeah.
It's just like a big wagon, basically. They
Okay.
didn't even have animals to pull it.
Okay.
They
Well, yeah.
probably had to stop because they were busy killing each other along the way and could no longer drag it.
Great. Yeah, I haul it back to the old lady and leave very disturbed and in like hands shaking also. I don't think that Akale is confident that
Yeah, I
they
think I
could
want
have
another
bashed-
ruin roll as well. Yeah, for that
Yeah.
interaction with
Totally fine with that. Or
person.
could I well, I guess retroactively doing it as a risk roll probably wouldn't work.
No, because there was nothing at risk. You were not going to have any trouble getting the honey. Just do a ruin roll.
Okay.
A 1. You're keeping it together, nevertheless, in terms of ruin.
Right on.
You can
Think
jump off the honey. Crone thanks you with a bundle of honey cakes. Pats you on the hand. And you can rejoin Mirren and the goat herd. Lek. The fox withdraws its mouth from yours, a dribble of saliva momentarily connecting the two of them. And he looks at you and he says, "That didn't work. But fear not. I'm happy to walk along with you and explain the situation to anyone who needs it explained to them. Meanwhile, how are you with sign language?"
He will not really look at his hands, just kind of raise them, and then the fox will see like the fingers look a little bit green and black still, and just, and then like Lek will point to the goat, and then like gesture for all of them to go back to the goat herd.
Indeed. The goat herd is very happy, and he offers you rewards from his meager possessions. Lek, you are perhaps ironically gifted a well-worn set of panpipes.
He'll do an experimental, blow on them to come up with something relatively musical. But yeah.
Indeed. Akale, you are gifted a sturdy goat horn comb.
Very good.
And Mirren, you are given a ripe green apple with a red blush.
This looks delicious. Oh, and little cakes.
Yes, and you have the cakes as well. And the goat herd says, "Be careful if you go into the woods." And the creatures there, they are wily, and they delight in tormenting. They find great amusement in this. Do not eat the apple, or blow the pipes, or pass the comb through your hair, unless at your moment of greatest need.
I guess Mirren puts the apple back down into a pocket and asks Lek, her companion, about her newest companion. Something along the lines of, "Oh, and you rescued yet another creature?"
Yes, Lek, you said, very, very kind enough to pull my leg out of a trap. At some point during the process, I gained his voice. I don't know if I gained his personality. Really, I'm just discovering the concept of personality right now in real time. It's something.
Lek, are you good in there? What can we? Is this?
Is the fox lying?
We certainly wouldn't want to make assumptions.
I mean, Lek is going to point and clutch his throat and just, like try to say words, but you don't hear anything coming out. I mean,
The goat herd
fox is
says,
just-
you should try honey. Let it flow down your throat, thick and warm.
No, I disagree with that. I don't think you should. In fact, no one should be hungering for honey for the rest of the day or talking about it, please.
Lek just
But-
side eyes Akale.
Not even these little cakes.
The cakes aren't for us, and we're not going to talk about them, please.
One of the goats has a cake in its mouth. It's like,
Why is my goat so hungry for blood and carnage?
with all the goats delivered, the goat herd will show you the way deeper into the woods. He warns you that you're not the first group to ever come here seeking the Forest Queen. And a question for all of you: why do you think you will succeed where others have failed?
I think Mirren is poisonously optimistic that how could things possibly go wrong? Just now finding inspiration again for the first time. I think that she has just failed upward all of her life and is assuming that this will go well.
Also, we should point out that Lek has flowers in his hair as well.
He looks so handsome with the flowers. I think Akale is, maybe this doesn't, tell me if this doesn't answer the question sufficiently, but I think if someone were to ask Akale that question, Akale would pivot to talking about how they don't really feel like they have any other option. They went from being not free as part of a cult to probably doing things that no person should ever be in a position to be forced to do, to then find themselves not free, living in debt to the Southern Pass Company. So they're not there yet. They haven't finished their first plan that they need to finish to just live life at all.
Failure is not an option.
Mhm.
Lek, why will you succeed where others have failed?
Because unlike his former self, who was known as Kel, he's not out for riches. He's not out to join any court. He's out to break this gesh that he's been afflicted with because of his first failing, which was finding and serving a mistress. And he thinks that because his is not about riches or wealth, it's going to happen. And the Forest Queen's magic, he's maybe ridiculously confident, will beat the Witch of Navask. At least that's his hope.
You head deeper into the woods, out of the clearing. A light sun shower breaks out, a rainbow forming overhead. The soft rain is pleasant against your skin, and so passes ring 1. Let's take a 5-minute break. Ring 2. As the treasure hunters press further into the Queensweald, the landscape becomes more dramatic and difficult to traverse. Indeed. There is no rational explanation for this place. terrains are melding into one another, in and out. Alpine hills rising into mountains, melding into fast-flowing rivers, running through dark, dense forest, all of it miles apart, and sometimes just yards apart. It is truly a space of chaos given a rough form. Or perhaps it is a place of dreams. For example, you're walking through the woods. In one moment, and in the very next moment, you turn a corner and find yourself at the base of a snowy mountain. The fox says, "Well, it looks like our only choice is to go up."
So are we just going to be listening? No offense. I hope you understand, but we just listening to this strange fox now? Not that you're wrong. Again, no offense meant.
Well, I just don't see anywhere else to go. And I'm
The
quite enjoying
creature
the
has a
adventure.
point.
Yeah, I guess there's no point in arguing, considering it's the only place to go. And I'm glad you're enjoying being a part of our adventure. I said to a fox out loud.
Yes, I am.
Mirren will actually look at Lek and ask if, do you have any experience in traversing any space like this?
Lek will shake his head and almost bring his hands together to do something, but then he decides not to, and then shakes his head again.
Well, then the fox will be correct now, and we'll just talk amongst the group if we have ideas of what we'll do next. But for now, up.
Who among the three of you is most likely to be able to help the group safely scale and indeed navigate over this mountain?
I think it might be Acolyte.
Do not think it is Mirren.
Lek
Certainly
is
has
the first thought in Lek's mind is to use fault, but that could bring down the whole mountain on us. So
Oh, to break it apart, that's an option. I mean, it could work. I don't
climactic.
know. Akale has trails and strength, so I kind of feel that pretty well.
Yeah,
If we
they do
don't
their
wanna-
work in inhospitable places. I don't know that they've ever like traversed an alpine mountain, but they know how to get through terrain that, like, if you're not careful, can be dangerous to you.
Yeah, let's have a
Some
risk roll.
commonsensical stuff like not tying yourself together with one rope.
Sure, yeah. And all of these places Akale has moved through, keep in mind, none of those places have been dreamlike or stitched together in, insane ways.
Indeed. Let's do a risk roll. Everyone, what could go wrong here?
now he's going to work out a trail for us. Is that what
I think they're gonna find a trail, but also I think that seems like that's basically the finding the way up and over is the key
Yeah.
here.
They're going to kind of like forge a path. Maybe we all rope ourselves together, etc.
I think that what could go wrong is that the terrain will change in the middle of you getting us through this, and it's going to be a terrain that we were not prepared for. So something completely different.
I think you might run into some mountain monstrosities or animals that have forgotten themselves.
Perhaps in focusing too much on how we have to go up, we don't realize that the path behind us is changing in such a way that we cannot return.
The first light die, I think, is pretty well accounted for here, Akale. Let's talk about devil's bargains. Everybody can offer one. Or Sarah, Mads, and I will offer. I'm going to say that well, let me take a look at your character. Come back to me. I'm going to say that there's a lost caravan of the Southern Pass Company on this mountain.
Is the Southern Pass Company the cult, or is it like something completely separate?
In my mind, it's separate. It's some kind of entity, some organization, company that Akale had to get resources from, either in escaping the cult or to survive immediately after escaping it. And they
It's
kind of
like
had
the
to
East India Trading Company.
That's vibes I was picking up. They had to
I
like
think-
sign a blank check.
Okay. I think what's going to happen is, like, no matter what, that when we're on this trail that you're blazing for us to get through this terrain, I think you're going to find a sign or two of the cult, that they're here somehow.
Well, that's pretty good.
I'm going to offer that no matter what, for the remainder of this ring, you in the changing environment have just a quick moment, that gasp of panic where you think you're going to fall. And it's such that you have a little bit of death fright, and you can't help but through PTSD relive some of the worst moments that you experienced in the cult.
Oh, intriguing. Good flashback opportunities. 3 interesting things, Akale. You can reject them all, of course, but if you take one of them, you get an extra die.
All of them are incredibly good. Definitely an embarrassment of riches that I've got before me. I'm going to go with signs of the cult I escaped make
Very good.
themselves apparent.
You have 2 light, and I think 1 dark is probably automatic here because the inherent danger of this expedition, this
Right.
sudden expedition.
Lots of ways.
2 light, 1 dark.
2 light, 1 dark.
A 5 light. The complication, you'll succeed. The complication is on the other side of the mountain, literally where you kind of like leave the mountain, there's a titanic river that has to be forded the way you've gone. If you don't want to deal with that, you can add a dark die and try for a 6, but otherwise that's what's going to happen.
Remind me again, if I add a dark die and try for a 6 and that roll I make is worse, then that's what we're working with.
Yeah, you're
correct?
stuck with whatever you roll, but you get to roll all of them, like 2 light, 2 dark. So
Yeah. I'm gonna have to stick with the 5. 5 is so close. There's so little room for improvement.
yeah. Let's just have the scene. Let's have the scene of you all like suddenly having to scale a mountain. And I will tell you that like it has the feeling of like it will feel like you've been on the mountain for days or hours, right? Like it's real elastic in that way. At one point you're at the bottom, and at one point you're in the middle of a blizzard racked top, right? But what does it look like to begin with, Akale?
I think Akale is like again passing a rope. If we've got that kind of basic equipment between all 3 of us, and so we need to stay on the line with each other because this kind of travel is dangerous. And the first thing that you're liable to lose is the rest of the people you're traveling with. And I don't even know how to prepare for the fact that this is the kind of place where a mountain can sneak up on you like this. So everyone should tie in securely. I don't know if your fox has a tiny belt.
I think at one point during the journey, the fox will end up kind of like inside Lex's cloak and like poking out of the hood, almost like he's Lek, like
I picture that the fox has found a way to wrap himself up like a cat or something like that, like within Lex's hood, like almost
Well,
like
like a travel
like
throw pillow.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, one of those stalls. As crazy as that is. Yeah. And so basically, definitely peeking out of the hood and staying warm, and then, like, just clinging by,
Mm.
being around
And it's got
Lek's shoulders.
flowers in its fur too.
Yeah, yeah.
um, good. Mirren, you almost certainly didn't pack for this kind of weather. How's that part of it going?
I think that on sheer adrenaline, Mirren's composing her ode to daffodils, the chaos of this place, the like roiling magic of it, even having to clench teeth and just numb, almost bloody fingers, so frostbitten, but dazzled and amazed by the surroundings. And the warmth of that is disguising the rest of the suffering.
Make a ruin roll, actually.
Sir. I'm tied with my ruin, but just barely.
How does it feel though? Like, how is this place sinking its, maybe not quite fully sinking its claws into you, but nevertheless probing at the edges?
I think that being distracted is leaving Mirren very embattled. So as the mountain itself and the surfaces change and the handholds move, she's struggling and breaking nails and pinky fingers and toes, and there's a lot of sliding and gashing. And without the proper gear, you see her green outfit has become quite tattered.
Lek, the fox is speaking to you in your ear. It says, I've had an idea. Perhaps there has to be some sort of physical transference from me to you. Not a breath, but something more solid. I was thinking that I could find some food along the way, chew it up, swallow it, and then regurgitate it into your mouth, and perhaps your voice will come with it. Thoughts?
Now, if this is happening as they're climbing, it's like, all you can hear right now is Lex puffs and huffs of trying to make this effort. But then at the fox's words in his ear, he just kind of turns his head a little bit, looks at the fox with a big glaring side eye, and says, and then mouths the word, no.
It's like, I see. Well, just brainstorming here, And yeah, before you know it, you're down on the other side of the mountain and it's warm again, or warmish. You're no longer in freezing alpine cold. And you don't even see the mountain behind you. You just see the forest. And yeah, let's just have the scene with everybody there having scaled the mountain. You will hear, though, the rushing of a river.
Oh, do we not see it? Are we not like right on the river?
You can hear it before you can see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's probably one of those deals where we're at like the forest is behind us, and we're at this like not ledge but just like ground. But if you go a little bit further, you're looking out over a ledge,
Right.
showing the river probably. And then Lek will actually lean down and then kind of let the fox out from underneath their hood and their cloak. But as he's doing so, he is clutching his throat, and then he's also clutching the fox's throat as well. And then he's trying to hum, and he's trying to like try to get some kind of like sympathetic feeling in the fox's throat to try to see if something, some kind of resonance, to see if if that'll work. Just to try anything in this changing landscape.
Indeed.
So
We'll revisit that moment.
okay.
Indeed, Mirren, it is sort of like this place. It's almost like a pop-up book, right? Like the river is just quite suddenly folded to be where you're at, right? There it is, quite wide, quite long. You're going to have to ford it to get to the other side of it.
As soon as Mirren gets to the grass on the shoal, perhaps even as the origami folds of this place create a river that is too wide in front of me, she is just gonna comically flop like onto the grass as if she couldn't possibly. And the green of her outfit blends with the grass, and all you can see are the just bloody scratches of her exhausted body laying there.
The fox is like, this is a very, very novel experiment we're engaging in right now. And the fox looks over at you, Akale. Is your friend known for randomly murdering talking woodland creatures who it has come to love him so well?
Well,
At that, Lek will like immediately like let go of the fox, but just kind of look stricken. It's like, and then try to say something, but I'm guessing the voice isn't back.
I have a feeling that once we're no longer in this chaotic place, that whatever magics you possess, you will have mastery over them again. Perhaps they will even be enhanced. Or perhaps I'm entirely wrong, and I'll start walking upright and you'll start walking on all fours.
Lek's rolling his eyes.
I'm sorry. Is walking upright a thing that you've done before?
Well, one time I befriended a man going into the woods, and he had a bit of food I was interested in, and I did indeed briefly stand up on my hind legs in order to get at it. I didn't like the experience, though. How can one go out on two legs? It's illogical.
I'm suspicious you might not really be a fox through and through. No offense meant there, but I had to say it.
Strictly, I am a vixen.
The distinction probably means something more to Akale than it does to me, the player. But
oh well, it's a lady fox.
Right.
Just
I think
like it was a lady on the bridge, and it was a crone who lost her honey.
Okay, right. So there's balance. Lost on Akale, but now I'm getting it. And Akale comically falls on their butt, also kind of exhausted in front of the river. I don't know if anyone else has any ideas on how to deal with this, but we're going to tie off to each other again and move through dangerous terrain. I'm going to need to sit down just for a second at least.
How big does this look? How wide does this look?
It's getting wider.
I'm asking for trouble.
Mirren's kind of muffled voice comes up from the ground and says, I can make it, but I cannot take any of you with me. And I am not doing that rope thing again.
Lek vigorously shakes his head and, looks very frustrated and is just now really starting to look at his hands and will slip his gloves or slip the sleeves of his hands. And then I think everybody at this point can see that his hands look a little gnarled. And they look veined with green and black, like as if they've been healing from something. And he just he's getting red in the face, and he's going to try to He's imagining that there's a weak point underneath this growing river, and he's going to break it, and he's going to get this river to run out, to clear a path.
Very
He's going to
intriguing
do
indeed.
fault.
Very
He's going to
intriguing
do
indeed.
fault.
While Lek is preparing the ritual, I will tell you that this landscape is more beautiful than anything you've ever seen before, despite its shifty nature. Maybe because of its shifty nature. The sun is warm and never dimmed by clouds. If you dip your hand into the waters, they are fresh and cold and clear. The fox has brought back berries and mushrooms, drops them out of his mouth or her mouth, and he looks at you, Lek, as if to say, could chew him up and do the whole thing. But if you rescue any of the berries and mushrooms, they are delicious. And you see Mirren, a majestic stag. It gets very close. It doesn't have the same skittishness that wild animals normally have. Its antlers practically glow. What do you do?
As soon as Mirren recognizes that this animal won't jump or scurry if she moves, after watching it proceed, she'll lean up and sit kind of cross-legged and hold a hand out in both greeting and offering of if it wanted to touch.
The stag will approach you. It has your little card stuck on one of its antlers. Pierced.
Oh, aren't you a fortuitous creature?
What do you do?
Mirren side-eyes the fox and asks the stag out loud, "Did you know I was going to be here?"
The stag turns and goes back the direction it came. Wanders off, disinterested. Still has your card.
And it's just kind of following the river along.
Yeah.
Like upstream. Mirren thought that that was a sign, so we'll just instead attempt to blink to the location of the stag to get the card back. I don't want to be without it. This place brought it to me again.
Akale, what are you doing in the meantime while Lek prepares his ritual?
That's a very good question. I'm curious if
Also,
I
the
just
sign of the cult. What was that?
Oh, right. I imagine that's probably what I found at this moment. That seems kind of appropriate. The first thing that comes to my mind would be something carved into a tree, but I don't know if anyone has any better ideas. Because I have not really defined the lore of this cult, but some sort of eye-based symbol carved into a tree is the first thing that that catches my mind.
Yeah, it's good. What was the nature of this cult? What was their belief system? What did they do?
Um, I think that they were a cult in kind of the archetype of wanting to usher in the new world, whether that be toppling pantheons or um, living in a way so far outside of society's norms, as a kind of like thing they've been prescribed to do, because they believe the world will be like that. Probably some, grisly activities as well, kind of commonplace.
Very interesting. Make a ruin roll.
Yeah. Akale's mind seems to be their worst enemy at this point.
I mean, you got
Just
3.
thinking about it. Yeah,
Or no, you got
absolutely.
6. Oh, you got 6.
Mhm.
Your ruin goes up. How does it make you feel to see the sign?
Like a rat in a corner, at once powerless and also like I think the first thing that they do, like their hand is immediately on their hatchet they carry with them. Yeah, they feel powerless and in their head have already kind of made a pact with themselves to never be under that yoke again, and so are immediately contemplating what they're prepared to do to keep that promise to themselves.
I think it was probably pretty common in this cult on feast days, holy days, to make sacrifices of horned beasts. And I think upon seeing the symbol, you would feel 2 very sharp points of pain in your forehead. And if you touch your forehead, you will feel little nubbins of horn growing there.
Terrible.
Mirren, you are able to be next to the stag even without completing your ritual. You're just there.
Somehow the landscape folds in just a way that the
Yeah.
point of distance is
Yeah.
shorter.
Exactly. And kind of rising up around you is a pack of wolves that seem to have forgotten themselves. They're snarling at the stag. They have no interest in you. You can abandon the stag to its fate if you wish.
Purely self-interested, Mirren is concerned for her card and that only. So in choosing to abandon the stag would make at least an attempt
You can take
to
the
wrest that from the horns.
You
and
can
then
take the
let's-
card and upon laying your hands upon it, you feel a whoosh as you are moved away from the scene of the wolves tearing the stag to pieces. It bleats out in pain. Make a ruin roll.
I've met my ruin again. I rolled a 3.
What is it about the card that makes you not give this much thought?
This place brought it back to me. I had lost it. I truly do belong among the swirl and court. And I'm just transfixed in that
What was
moment.
standing in your way back home? And how did this incident with the stag and the wolves remind you of it?
You cut out on the first part of what you said.
What What was standing in your way back home? And how did this incident with the stag and the wolves remind you of that?
As a merchant's daughter with some grand ideas about herself, Mirren grew up very privileged, but to be as ladylike as possible. And none of her passion or persuasion could convince her parents to let her be anything other than what society demanded. And so Mirren recalls just how many hungry suitors she was essentially thrust in front of at so many dances, trying to marry her off.
Lek, let's have the ritual. Sarah, what could go wrong here in attempting to break the river?
That a magical clockwork of spell work is working underneath all of this, and that you will actually break a component that is holding the terrain together as it is.
I like that. That's fun. Let's talk about dice. So, do you have a ritual skill or something?
I do. I have
yeah.
rituals.
You got your first light die, no trouble. Bob, you can offer the devil's bargain.
The first thing that comes to mind is that you will in some way mirror the fault that you are creating, like fissure lines coming to the fore on your maybe on your hands, furthering the kind of corruption coming there.
Do you take it?
Actually, no, I won't. I'm just going to do one light, one dark.
Go for
Try
it.
this out for a second.
I was just going to say that we could keep the record number for now, just to keep your historical number.
That's a 2 light. That is a fail.
And then.
Do you want to add a dark die and try again?
Yes.
6 dark. Your ruin goes up, but is a full success. Describe how your ritual helps you cross the river.
I think that, Lek has taken his arm coverings down, and everybody can see the damage to his hands. But he's still able to call upon his magic and then do the ritual of fault, where he's bringing his fingers together, intertwining them, and then snapping them open. And when he does this, it creates this crack, this fissure underneath. You can feel it more than see it. And then it shows the river splitting open and then going down into this rift that he's created, and then creating this path all the way across and through. And then you actually see the landscape change again. And on the other side of the rift, it's basically clear into another part of the forest.
The bottom of the riverbed is filled with flowers, pink and yellow and white. And as you are all wading through it, the flowers stick to Lek, so that by the time you get across to the other side, Lek is crowned in them to where you can't even see his hair anymore. And they are all over his clothes. They almost create like a tunic of flowers. You will have also noticed, actually, Akale, do you attempt to hide your little horns, or do you just let those be seen openly?
I let them be seen. I would go so far, almost depending on what you have in store, to say that Akale would, upon noticing either one of the other two noticing the horns, just give like a short explanation. Just be like, "This is what I deserve. I don't want to talk about it, but this is just what I deserve."
Let's just have that scene with everybody reaching the other side, noticing Akale's horns.
This is on the other side, like, once we've crossed the rift.
Yeah.
You're covered in flowers.
Yeah.
Not that Lek has much to say at this point, but
But actually, I mean, what you're making your I guess your hurried stuttered explanation and such. I think Lek is going to actually look at you. I mean, like, you're seeing like the flowers all around him and such, and he's going to say, "I know someone, or I knew somebody that had that same affliction
you can't speak
come
though.
upon them." Ah, that's right. But I mean, like, he's mouthing this. It's like he's trying to tell you.
I kind of like the idea of it coming out of the fox's mouth.
Yeah.
Like, you discover you can speak through the fox, which is kind of intriguing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, coming out of the fox, then, like, you hear Lek's voice saying, it's like, "I knew someone like you once with that affliction coming upon them, and they had darkness. But it's all in what you do with it that matters, not what you look like." As he kind of just, spreads his hands and say, "Look at me."
Yeah, I think Akale.
Fascinating. Where did this vixen find such a companion?
The fox says, "I will only speak once more."
Oh, that wasn't you
Starting now.
talking just now. I see.
I'll do my best to remember that then, Lek, and I appreciate it. For what it's worth, I think the flowers are very beautiful.
Mirren, I would like you to roll ruin at seeing your companions so changed by this place.
Let's see how it is. I rolled a 1.
The fox. Well, actually, let's pause for a moment. To savor this scene. A question for each of you, a different question for each of you. Lek, what does the wilderness here provide that you were lacking at home?
I think at this point it's providing a mission. I mean, besides the geesh that he's under, I mean, just this ability to have a purpose again, instead of just aimlessly wandering around, lost in being someone else.
Akale, what was the most beautiful place you had seen before, and how is the landscape here even more beautiful?
I think probably the most beautiful place that Akale had seen before was like a ritual place for the cult. Some place that I'm imagining like large woven branch structures, and then kind of like an outdoor gazebo pavilion thing. And on feast days or special ritual days, it would be festooned with beautiful flowers collected from outside of where the cult was, because you never see colors of flowers rather of that color. And that's like a very small island of beauty in a very just dark before and after, especially colorless after, I think post cult. And looking around, Akale sees flowers that equally double the beauty of the ones collected for those feast days, just growing naturally as if it was the easiest thing in the world. And if they look with a little bit of a squint in their eyes, the trees themselves seem to be arranged in purposeful shapes, like stained glass happening all on its own.
Mirren, what tells you that you are on the right path?
Everything in her life has led to this moment. And so as the landscape opens up into more forest, she feels accomplished, as if, all right, well, that part's done. On to what's next.
The fox whispers to you, Lek. I shall speak once more, and then this voice is gone forever. I know how to do it. You must take me into your body. Split me down the middle, and feast upon the cornucopia of my viscera.
I don't know whether Lek has a dagger or any kind of implement.
You can if you want.
Okay.
Presumably you wouldn't have come out here without a dagger, so.
True, like some sort of protection. So
So this was added to the Beacon Hill MI.
he'll
It didn't matter.
gently clasp the vixen's face and give her a kiss on the head before he plunges the dagger into her and does what she asked or said.
As Lek feasts upon the vixen, the goat herd's song can be heard high and keening on the air. It is the herald of the forest queen. Each of you feels warm, dry fingers stroking the small of your back, the scent of pine in your nose, and a loving whisper. Welcome to my court. And so passes ring 2. And so passes the session. Let's do stars and wishes. That's our debrief. Stars are things you enjoyed about the session, either story, bits of role play, anything really. And wishes are things that you hope to see in the next session. Think about it for a moment. Whoever wants to go first, go ahead.
I just want to say I want to star my co-players. Mirren, I mean, even though you were uninspired, your narrations were definitely, full of, a facility that I think Mirren wishes that they had. And then it just like it I could see everything. I mean it was like, as the flowers were blooming through the forest, it's like, can sort of hear like, your inspiration kind of creeping back as well. So it was blossoming as we were going through. And then Akale, you're, dealing with what you were dealing with. I mean, staying pretty practical and stoic through the whole thing. I mean, like, your handling of the circumstances. I mean, like, I think, spoke well for your character. So you may be the one that survives this. Um, and Jason, it's like, I always enjoy watching you work, like, so even taking us through this surreal dreamlike landscape. I mean, there's still that sinister undertone, and then there's still that poetry there, and then your grace, taking us through the rings and each of the different scenes through it all. I mean, and then you're working off of what we're giving you, so I mean, like, it's a really great back and forth as always. So I enjoyed that a lot. Wishes, I mean, well, I'm due for a reduction roll like when we come back, so I can't wait to see, like, how Lek or Kel is going to resolve that, and hopefully we'll see who gets ruined.
I'll go next. Yeah, I had a great time. It was really fun. It's I always like to say that like Trophy Dark is like the A24 horror movie, the role-playing game, and this session really felt like that, right? Like this sort of like dreamy, surreal, pastoral kind of feel, this sort of underlying sinister tone of scenes that were otherwise not sinister. I loved all that. The ending of Lek feasting on the fox was terrific, so star for that. Just that sort of like operatic horror and drama of that moment was very, very vivid. I love the scene between Akale and the honey crone. I thought that was very, very fun. Oh, and also the scene with the ruffians too. Like that whole sequence was really, really good, because it's sort of like, I've been kind of like pushing this theme of like the forest forgetting itself, right? Like people forgetting themselves. And that kind of felt like this is what happens when you forget yourself, right? Like this situation. And so I kind of really love that we got to do that. And I thought Akale's, the way you played it was really, really fun, Bob. And yeah, everyone just did a great job with the role play. The Mirren, the scene with the stag was great, and kind of making these tough choices. Everyone made some tough choices to get the best story, and I really love that. I thought that was really, really fun. And yeah, and star to Mads for playing along with the no voice thing. I thought that was great. So it was a good, it was a fun devil's bargain. And wishes, yeah, just kind of curious to see how the next phase is going to go, especially as you sort of slide into the court of the Fae Queen more directly. I think that'll be really fun.
Go ahead, Bob.
You saw me on mute. Perfect. Yeah, I mean, stars absolutely all around. It was the cohesion that like instantly was able to pop up between our characters, and the amount of character density that y'all brought to the table was just like, it was perfect. It's not like none of it felt like trying to put too much info in too little bit of a time. It flowed naturally. I got an idea of your characters. It felt really natural to play off of that in the scenes we had together. Tons of just really fun and interesting moments. That scene of sending the separated lovers across the bridge, I really liked. And again, like really cool choices there to kind of highlight things that are important to your character. And I mean, Lek, from eating the fox to just all the little asides, which is really, really perfect window into that character's mind. And then this could either speak to the design of the game, or Jason, your individual skill. I'd like to say it applies to both, but it was so nice and just like a big breath of fresh air for me to be playing in this arena and feel like you're sticking it to us a little bit, wanting to make sure the devil's bargains are suitably what they need to be. And for that not to feel like it's sticking it to us, to feel like, giving us more tools to work with. And I certainly felt, supplied with as many tools as I needed to really make some challenging decisions and get to explore what this game lets you explore. So yeah, stars all around, incredibly thrilled. The only wish I could think of is it's really something more that I'm excited to see as we go on, is just how we're going to take this very tepid and kind of supportive almost group dynamic and just kind of tear it apart at each other, our characters kind of falling apart.
I always have fun when I play Trophy Dark because I like to get wrecked. And so lately I've been on a vibe of picking characters that are positively poisonously positive. It's that self-fulfilling prophecy of if you hope for the best, it must turn out well. And playing that kind of counterbalance to Trophy Dark in general is fun for me because I do like to see how that really starts to twist the minds. Anyway, I also really enjoyed the ruffians of a usual size, Jason. Lovely. There was a ROUS Princess Bride reference in the chat. That was excellent. I like that Akale knew where to scritch goats. Like that is just like a weird little textural sub cue of your character and the history that you've had. That brought me a lot of joy as a player, but I liked it. Also, we had a bunch of side-eyeing throughout the whole of this adventure, which I also felt was kind of interesting. As we start to encounter more characters in the fairy court, maybe that will be something that we continue to do in rings 3, 4, and 5. I think lastly, it was mostly just the mini goat quest, or the goat mini quest for me. I was living for that whole, even though I had a simple answer, I loved the way that you guys had to make really interesting and quest within a quest sort of choices. It's that following the breadcrumbs too far into the woods, like very fairy tale vibes. And so my last star was for Jason. Goats are always silently judging. I have to write that down. Wishes, again, I really always have a good time. I'm just looking forward to betraying you all.
Fabulous. Yeah, it was a great session. Any other stars or wishes before we go? Okay. In that case, for those of us on video, we're going to wave goodbye to people watching the video.